Hello and welcome to another episode of Off the Ruck, your weekly rugby breakdown with me, John Ferguson. Now, I know before we get into what the video is about today, which is about the Wallabies' defensive systems, and a lot of critique has been leveled at them in the last couple of days from across the ditch in New Zealand, from a couple of writers here in Australia, and some in the Northern Hemisphere. And we're going to work to see whether this is actually true. And a little bit of a spoiler alert, I think that people are blowing certain things out of proportion and giving certain things too much weight. And what I would say is the biggest criticism overall of the Wallabies is that their defense is, within quotation marks, passive. Now, this is something which I think is an unfair and incorrect and a wrong criticism of the Wallabies defense. And I'm going to show you with video analysis pieces. I'm going to show you the Wallabies versus the Fiji side over a week ago now. And I'm going to try to show you guys why I don't believe that being the case, but also why it's an incorrect criticism to level at the Wallabies defense. But before we get into the video analysis, I'd just like to say that it's been a couple of hundred followers and subscribers here on YouTube since I've actually introduced and say what I do and why I do what I'm doing here on this channel. So I'm a rugby journalist. I write for rugbypass.com. They're a global rugby website which covers everything from under 20s right up to test matches and World Cups. They also offer media, so they do a lot of videos. They had Chasing the Sun on there. Series 1 and 2, and they obviously do a lot to promote the game in all corners of the world. So it's a great website. I'm just a freelancer there, and I write there. I'm a columnist for them weekly, and I used to write for the raw.com here in Australia. And the reason why I started this YouTube channel and why I write rugby pieces and freelance that way is because I want to be able to bring those people who already love the complexity of rugby some easy to understand analysis, which brings people more joy and greater understanding of rugby. And in turn, I'm hoping that will bring new eyes to rugby and to continue to grow rugby in Australia, particularly because here we are an Australian rugby channel, but I do cover all sides, and going into the test season, I will be doing test teams from all over the world. So just keep your eyes peeled if you are from outside of Australia. But I think there's a gap in the market, and I want to be able to promote and explain the complexity of rugby, because it's one of the elements which I think a lot of people often say is a bad thing or a barrier to rugby, but I think it's one of our greatest assets in such a complicated and connected team sport where you need all the players on the field to play their part exactly perfectly to be able to then go on and win a game of rugby, whether you're playing at a reserve level or you're playing juniors or you're all the way up at test match rugby. It's all about the team. It's never about the individual, and that comes with a certain level of complexity, which I am loving to just be able to bring forward in my video analysis and in my news, views, and rugby chats that I have with different people that I interview from around the rugby world. There's an interview section on YouTube, so you can go through and have a look who I've chatted with there. But I think that's ultimately the aim of what I do, and with what I do on here on the rugby channel, on the YouTube channel, and then also elsewhere. You can follow me on Instagram, you can follow me on TikTok, wherever you get your media from. Now, through to today's video, we're going to be talking about the Wallabies defensive system. And I want to go through some stats to help you guys highlight some differences in different systems and different structures that people have in their defenses. So if we go through first the All Blacks side, who played the French development team, I think everyone can agree that's exactly what it is. If we look up the stats here, I'll whip them up here on the page, they tackled at 93%, missing 9 tackles. So the French, they tackled at 88%, missing 30 tackles, but they made 100 more tackles than they did. But the All Blacks, like the Wallabies, run a connected line speed defensive system. So that means that they're not rushing too hard. They're just making sure that they're always connected and they stay together with a man inside or outside of them. That is a big difference in what South Africa run, which we're going to go through, in the Springboks run, which we're going to go through in just a second. But if we go to the second game in that, then they tackled at 91%, missing 15 tackles, making 151 tackles. So a few more tackles. The French made less. They tackled at 86%. They tackled a little bit less, worse as well, missing 23 tackles. But what I'd say about this is that the gold standard in connected line speed defensive systems is between 90 and about 95. It's very, very hard to tackle above 95% in test match rugby because you're always versing such talented athletes. And that is just the way that rugby goes. You're always going to have some misses in and around the park. So they tackled at 93% in the first game and 91% in the second game. Both are extremely good defensive shifts from the All Blacks and really, really solid defensively. That's what they are. If we go to the Springboks and their 2 games against Italy, then you'll see that in the first game, they tackled at 85%. So missing 22 tackles out of 126 tackles made. And then I think that although this looks a lot worse than 93% and 91%, they're running a rush defense. So in this, you're less focused and less concerned with the absolute completion of tackles. You're more about putting pressure and stressing the oncoming attack. So you're trying to put as much pressure as you can on them by getting off the line quickly and forcing them to make a missed pass, to drop a ball, or to be able to collect a ball and not be ready for the impact of the tackle, and then to be able to force backwards, shutting down the momentum of the attack, and in turn to be able to create that pressure on the attacking team, and then them hopefully kicking you the ball in a position where they don't actually want to kick, but they're kind of out of options. So that's what they tackled at the Springboks, 85%. Italy tackled 86%, missing 32 tackles. In game 2, we're looking at a 3% increase by the Springboks, although they tackled much, much less, missing 8 tackles. But still, and obviously the Italians tackled better as well, but still, this just goes to show that the connected line speed, no matter how dominant you are, no matter how few tackles you make, it's still very hard to get into that 90% threshold. And you looking at this as something, the first 2 tests of the series, the Springboks are only going to get better, but that doesn't necessarily mean the percentage is going to get better. And then if we go to the Wallabies, we are looking at an 86% tackle success rate, missing 29 tackles. This is far too much for a connected line speed defense that the Wallabies and the All Blacks run. They would have wanted figures like the New Zealand side for both of their games. Like they would like low to mid 90s, but that is not what they've achieved here. And I think that comes down to very few athletes and teams in the world, and I'd like to say almost none, are as good as the Fijians in the loose. They evade tackles and they create situations where they use their brawn, pace, and offloading power to be able to put defenders in awkward positions and miss those tackles. And I'm going to highlight some of those situations in the video, and you'll see the tackles drop off very quickly in only a few select moments. But overall, the Wallabies actually defended really well. So what I'll say before we head into this analysis of the defense is that certain defenses have certain markers. Very, very aggressive off the line, very much wanting to make dominant hits behind the gain line, and that's what they do in the rush defense in case of South Africa. For the Wallabies and the All Blacks, they are just wanting to be able to make as close to 100% of their tackles and to guarantee that they can get enough players in and around the ball to be able to slow that ball down, to be able to ensure that they, again, to be able to put more pressure onto the next breakdown. Whereas the Springboks are putting pressure on players to be able to make decisions quickly. And I think this distinction is very important for carrying into the video analysis, which we'll be doing right now. The first thing which is important to mention is that in this video, it is specifically about how the Wallabies will fare against the British and Irish Lions, and how their system can succeed, but also how it may struggle against the Lions on Saturday night. This video will chronologically follow the game. This is the Fijians' first proper attack of the game, and Fiji look for width, and this is where the Wallabies can be described as looking passive. The 2 centres, Len Ikitau and Joseph Akuso Suali'i, can be seen jockeying, trying to push Joshua Tuisova towards the sideline and cramp his space. In doing so, the Wallabies lose 14 metres in just one phase. Fiji do an excellent job here to play on the front foot and play direct and flat around the ruck, but the Wallabies defenders are strong enough in the tackle to make it a tussle and in turn slow the ball. Had it not been for Fiji knocking on the ball, the Fijians would have gone back and lost 5 metres in contact, and this is where the defence, ebb and flow of the Wallabies defence becomes clear. Notice how there were no missed tackles yet, the Wallabies conceded 40 metres in total. It's definitely not as impressive as the line speed defence as the Springboks, but it proved effective. Note that this passage starts on the halfway line, and as the clip progresses, we see that the Fijians have gained only 1 metre in 5 phases before they have to box kick. What's clear here is that everyone is focused on solid low contact that makes the tackle an arm wrestle, and individuals are communicating about when to accelerate off the line. This is about trust, and although it's not aggressive, it forces Fiji to kick on the Wallabies' terms. Something which the Lions are going to have to be careful of on Saturday is the false sense of meterage in the tackle and the danger that poses to the resulting breakdown. Here we see Fraser McRae pounce on a tackler and get a penalty because the carrier carried away from his support, leaving him isolated. Again, the Wallabies defense is about patience and frustrating the attack. Here the Fijians start just past halfway. In 4 phases, they have made a net gain of 4 metres, before resulting in a penalty for the Wallabies. It wasn't perfect defense, but it was patient, forcing Fiji to change their point of attack just to attempt to crack it. This next example is where I would say the Wallabies have the most to worry about coming up against the Lions this weekend. Although the defense is like a lumbering oppressive wall, the Fijians are constantly able to make meterage around the 13 channel, which is part of the design of the Wallabies defense, but the Wallabies and All Blacks for that matter give up far too much territory in these situations. Joshua Tuisova once again makes it about 8 metres over the gain line, and should this happen against the Lions, they will be more clinical and aggressive than the Fijians are in the following phases. The following phase is the lengthiest Fijian attack so far in the game, and they make a total of 5 metres in 4 phases. That is before they manage to get outside the Wallabies defence once again. This line break conceded by the Wallabies is due to a breakdown in system as opposed to the system not working or being a dud system. In this instant, Langy Gleeson is in the red headgear, is caught flat-footed, and he doesn't jockey. Suaalii outside of him also is too high, giving the Fijian carrier a kind of vary the space to shift to the outside. Jorgensen, the last Wallabies defender, is caught in no man's land and is too slow to tackle the player. Should have jockeyed actually and waited for Slipper and McRae to come across with him. As we can see, Slipper actually ends up making the tackle on number 7 anyway. Had Jorgensen jockeyed, the Fijians would again only have made 5 or so metres. Instead, Ravovo makes a break down the line. Fortunately for the Wallabies, he kicks it away. And I couldn't make a video about this game without breaking down the sensational try by the Fijians on the stroke of half time. But the point of highlighting this is to showcase how many missed tackles occurred in this passage to allow the Fijians to run 60 metres and score in just one phase. It is a stellar finish from their debutant Salesi Rayasi in the number 15 jersey for Fiji, but that simply wasn't good enough. Suaalii misses the ankle tap on Karavoli initially, then over tracking on Waini Kolo and misses another tackle, then Tom Wright misses a basic first up tackle on Rayasi, and Jorgensen and Ikitau fail to inject any venom in their tackles to close to their line, and the Wallabies pay the ultimate price for those 7 missed tackles in one passage. If there's one passage of the Wallabies defence which looked passive, then it's this one. Fiji get a line out just outside the Wallabies' 22-metre zone, and Ravovo steams well past Len Ikitau and Fraser McRae. Regular, 2 great tacklers. The Wallabies are fortunate that the passing player knocks on Ravovo's pass, but this is something that the Lions could look to expose. Ikitau and McRae rarely defend next to each other, and that was plain to see in this example. The pair are just not in sync about who's going low, who's going high, and who's making the dominant hit first. Here we see the Fijians have a scrum on their 40-metre line, and they make 25 metres off one phase because the Wallabies' defensive system is designed to allow this to happen. This is where I have to agree that the Wallabies were too passive and they can't concede so much space on the jockey, otherwise the Lions will tear them to shreds. The Fijians in this instance got a penalty for offside, something the Wallabies must also be extremely disciplined with if they are trying to concede space like that over and over again in the 13 channel. Nevertheless, it's important to note that the Wallabies never conceded a line break just then, nor did the Fijians make more metres, rather they actually went backwards 5 metres after the initial metres were made. It's about highlighting how oppressively slow and lumbering, although tight, this Wallabies defence is, and that is the trade-off, and when you're looking at percentages of tackles, which is why we highlighted at the beginning, which is what's something you're looking for. Finally, here is an example of what the Wallabies can expect from the Lions. With likely Finn Russell at the helm for the game on Saturday, he is going to be skilled enough to change the direction of attack at a second's notice, just like the Fijians do here. This is an issue for the connected line speed defense of the Wallabies, because you have forwards marking backs, and Wilson in this instance, in the red headgear, overtracks and gets turned inside out by Salesi Rayasi. This is a great example of the Wallabies' defensive system being broken down by a simple change of direction and fabricating mismatches. It's something they must watch for against the Lions on Saturday, and it's something Finn Russell and Andy Farrell, the coach, will definitely have paid attention to from their game against Fiji. I think I'll leave you with this. The Wallabies' defensive pattern is oppressive because it has few leaks, and that it can frustrate an impatient side. The Lions won't get bored like the Fijians did on a few occasions in this match, but should the Wallabies land an early blow and get points ticking over from the tee, the Lions may be forced into a situation which is uncomfortable for them, and it may actually force some players to start throwing passes that they normally wouldn't. The Wallabies allow meterage around the edges to be made out wide because they subsequently tee off and force tacklers backwards, and they select these tackles and these moments very carefully as a unit. They are a slow lumbering wall of gold that hits they are putting on if plenty and sting in them. Now it's just for the missed tackles in the loose to be cleared up, and we are in for one hell of a test match in Brisbane on July 19 this weekend. I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did making it. I just hope that you guys have learned something. And if you have, please do drop me a like and a subscribe here on YouTube. That really helps me to be able to continue to bring more rugby content like this, and tells me that it's going to be beneficial and good for you guys in the future if you give me a like and a subscribe. I just want to clarify also, because I've had a few people ask me, no, it doesn't cost anything. As long as you have an email, you can make a YouTube account, which in turn allows you to follow and subscribe me here. So you just hit one of the buttons down here on subscribe, or the bell button, or the like, or ideally all three if you really like the content, if you feel like you learned something. Share with a rugby lover, continue to grow the game of rugby that we all love, and I hope you enjoy the first test against the British and Irish Lions from a Wallabies perspective. I'll be doing a preview later in the week, but this is just to talk about what the British and Irish Lions can expect in the Wallabies game, and what the Wallabies can do to shut down the British and Irish Lions. So I hope you guys enjoy that content, and I hope you enjoy your week. And until the next video, have a good one.